I didn't lose my fiancée to a stranger. I lost her to the man who shared my face. 3 days before my wedding, I came home early because I wanted to surprise Emily with the honeymoon tickets I had finally booked. I remember smiling as I unlocked the apartment door, thinking about how lucky I was. But the moment I stepped inside, I heard laughter coming from our bedroom. At first I smiled. Then I heard his voice, my identical twin brother Ryan. I froze. My heart started pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I walked toward the bedroom, praying my mind was playing tricks on me. It wasn't. The door was half open, and there they were, Emily and Ryan, in my bed. The woman I had loved for 6 years, and the brother I had trusted my entire life. For a few seconds I just stood there staring at them. Ryan was the first one to notice me. The color drained from his face. Emily screamed my name and grabbed the blanket. But I couldn't hear anything anymore. It felt like the entire world had gone silent. I looked at Ryan and asked one question. How long? He couldn't answer. Emily started crying, saying it was a mistake, that it only happened a few times. But Ryan lowered his eyes, and that told me everything. It wasn't a mistake. It was a secret they had been living while I was planning our wedding. I walked out without saying another word. That night I drove around for hours trying to understand how two people I loved the most could betray me like this. I cried, I screamed. I punched my steering wheel until my hands bled. But around 3 in the morning, something inside me changed. I stopped asking, why did they do this? And I started asking, what are they hiding? Because something didn't feel right. Ryan wasn't apologizing. Emily wasn't begging me to come back. Instead, they were strangely calm, almost relieved. That's when I realized something terrifying. They thought I was the one who would disappear quietly. They thought shame would destroy me. They thought I would cancel the wedding and disappear from everyone's lives while they stayed together and pretended none of this ever happened. They had no idea who they were dealing with. So the next morning, I called Emily, and the first words out of my mouth shocked her. I said, "The wedding is still on." There was silence on the other end of the phone. Emily thought I was broken. Ryan thought he had won, but neither of them knew one thing. I had already started planning the moment that would destroy everything they thought they stole from me. I know it sounds crazy now, but when I told Emily the wedding was still on, I wasn't thinking clearly, I was thinking strategically. She went silent for a few seconds before asking, "Are you sure?" I almost laughed at the audacity. Was I sure? I had just caught her cheating with my own twin brother, but I forced myself to sound calm and said, "I just don't want to throw away 6 years." Overnight, she started crying immediately, apologizing over and over again. The funny thing was, I didn't believe a single word she said anymore. Not after what I saw. Not after the way Ryan couldn't even look me in the eyes. But I needed them to believe I was weak. I needed them to think heartbreak had made me desperate. Because desperate people don't ask questions. Desperate people don't investigate. And I was about to investigate everything. Over the next 2 days, I acted exactly how they expected me to act. I smiled at family dinners. I answered wedding calls. I pretended I was trying to forgive Emily. Meanwhile, I started going through old messages, shared accounts, and cloud backups we had used for years. At first, I was just looking for proof of the affair. But what I found was far worse. Their relationship hadn't started recently. It had been going on for almost a year. While I was choosing wedding venues, Ryan was secretly taking Emily on trips. While I was working overtime to pay for our future, they were laughing behind my back in hotel rooms across the country. My stomach turned as I scrolled through hundreds of messages. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. One message from Ryan read, "After the wedding, he'll finally be out of the picture. Forever." Emily replied with a laughing emoji and wrote, "He'll never see it coming." I stared at my phone for what felt like hours, because suddenly this wasn't just betrayal anymore. They weren't afraid of hurting me. They were planning a life that erased me completely. That's when revenge stopped being an emotion. It became a decision. Quietly, I saved every message, every photo, every voice note. I backed everything up in multiple places. And then I discovered something even bigger, something neither of them knew I had access to. A private video Ryan had recorded months ago while bragging to one of his friends about stealing my fiancée and proving he was always better than me. I watched the video 3 times. Each time my anger disappeared a little more, and my plan became clearer. Because at that moment, I knew exactly when I would expose them. Not before the wedding, not in private, but in front of everyone they loved, respected, and lied to. And trust me, what happened that day was something neither Ryan nor Emily ever recovered from. The hardest part wasn't collecting evidence. It was pretending I was okay while the two people who betrayed me smiled in my face every single day. Emily started acting like we were rebuilding our relationship. She'd hold my hand, ask if I was feeling better, and tell me how grateful she was that I was giving her another chance. Meanwhile, she was still secretly texting Ryan. I knew because I could see everything now. Every lie, every fake apology, every message they thought I would never read. And the more I learned, the more I realized something painful. They never felt guilty for betraying me. They only felt guilty for getting caught. Ryan was even worse. He acted like nothing had happened. At our parents' house, he'd joke with me, pat me on the shoulder, and ask if I was excited for the wedding. I used to think having an identical twin meant having a best friend for life. But now, every time I looked at him, I felt like I was staring at a stranger wearing my face. Still, I stayed calm, because revenge isn't about anger. It's about timing. 2 nights before the wedding, I finished organizing everything: screenshots, hotel receipts, bank transfers, hidden photos, even the video of Ryan bragging about stealing Emily from me. I saved copies everywhere. If anyone tried to deny the truth, they wouldn't be able to. Then I met with the wedding DJ privately. I told him I had a special video I wanted played during the reception. He smiled and said, "No problem. Just bring the file." If only he knew what was inside it. The next day was the rehearsal dinner. Everyone was there. Our parents, relatives, friends, co-workers. Emily looked beautiful. Ryan looked confident. And watching them laugh together across the room almost broke me, almost, because I knew something they didn't know. This would be the last happy night of their lives. At one point, Ryan pulled me aside and said quietly, "You're stronger than I thought. Most people would have fallen apart after what happened." I stared at him for a second and smiled. "You have no idea." He smiled back, completely unaware of what was coming. That smile still haunts me sometimes, because it was the smile of a man who thought he had won everything. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. Guests filled the venue. Music played. Everyone thought they were about to witness the happiest day of my life. But I wasn't nervous anymore. I wasn't angry either. I was ready, because in just a few hours, every lie Ryan and Emily spent years building was about to collapse. In front of everyone they had ever fooled. The ceremony was beautiful. That's what everyone told me afterward. The flowers, the music, the smiles, it all looked perfect from the outside. But standing there at the altar, watching Emily walk toward me in her wedding dress, I didn't feel excitement anymore. I felt grief. Because the woman walking toward me wasn't the woman I fell in love with 6 years earlier. She was someone I no longer recognized. Emily looked into my eyes with tears in hers, probably thinking I had forgiven her. Ryan sat in the front row beside our parents, smiling proudly like the loving brother everyone believed him to be. And for a brief moment, I almost stopped everything. I almost told the truth right there. But then I remembered the messages, the lies, the laughter behind my back, and I reminded myself that some betrayals deserve to be exposed completely. So I stayed quiet. We exchanged vows. We exchanged rings. Everyone cheered. Emily kissed me while cameras flashed around us. And as strange as it sounds, that kiss felt like goodbye, not hello. A few hours later, the reception began. Music played. People danced. Glasses clinked. Then the wedding host picked up the microphone and smiled at me. "The groom has prepared a special surprise video for everyone tonight." The entire room applauded. Emily squeezed my hand and smiled. Ryan raised his glass toward me. I looked at both of them and smiled back. That was the moment everything changed. The lights dimmed. The screen behind us lit up. At first, people laughed, expecting childhood photos and happy memories. Instead, the first thing they saw was a screenshot of messages between Emily and Ryan. The room instantly went silent. Then came photos, hotel reservations, secret trips, voice messages, and finally, the video. Ryan's own voice echoed through the ballroom. "I've always been better than him. Taking Emily was easy. He never even saw it coming. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke." I turned toward Ryan. His face had gone completely pale. Emily started shaking beside me. She whispered my name, but I gently pulled my hand away. Then the crying started. My mother burst into tears. My father looked at Ryan like he didn't recognize him anymore. Guests stared in absolute disbelief. And for the first time since I discovered the affair, I wasn't the one feeling humiliated. They were. Ryan stood up and tried to explain himself, but nobody was listening anymore. Emily was sobbing uncontrollably. I looked around the room filled with shocked faces and realized something I wish I had understood years ago. Betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals who truly deserves a place in your life. And that night, I finally started letting go of the people who never deserved mine in the first place. I wish I could tell you I felt victorious, watching Ryan and Emily fall apart in front of everyone. But the truth is, I just felt exhausted. 6 years of love, 30 years of brotherhood, gone in a matter of minutes. The ballroom that was supposed to celebrate my future had turned into a graveyard of lies. Emily collapsed into a chair, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Ryan kept trying to defend himself, saying it wasn't what people thought, that he loved Emily, that they never meant to hurt me. I almost laughed at that. Never meant to hurt me? They lied to me for nearly a year. They looked me in the eyes every single day and pretended to love me while building a relationship behind my back. Hurt wasn't an accident. It was a choice they made over and over again. My father stood up slowly and walked toward Ryan. For a second, Ryan looked relieved, like Dad was going to defend him. Instead, my father said something I'll never forget. I raised 2 sons. Tonight I only recognize one of them. Ryan's face crumbled. My mother couldn't even look at him. She just sat there crying, while years of trust shattered in front of her eyes. Emily reached for my hand one last time and whispered, "Please don't let this be how we..." And I looked at her and realized something painful. I didn't hate her anymore. I simply didn't know her. The woman I loved would never have laughed at my pain. The woman I loved would never have chosen my own brother behind my back. So I gently stepped away and said the hardest words I've ever spoken. "You stopped being my future the moment you made me your secret." Emily broke down completely. But for the first time, I didn't try to comfort her. Because healing doesn't begin when the people who hurt you apologize. It begins when you finally stop needing their apology at all. I walked out of that ballroom alone. Guests moved aside in silence as I passed them. Outside, the cold night air hit my face, and I just stood there staring at the sky. For months, I thought exposing Ryan and Emily would fix me. It didn't, but it gave me something I desperately needed: the truth. And sometimes, the truth hurts far less than the lies we keep believing. I thought the story ended there. I thought Ryan and Emily would disappear from my life forever. I was wrong, because 3 months later, Ryan showed up at my front door, and the reason he came back was something I never saw coming. 3 months passed after the wedding disaster, and I slowly started putting my life back together. I stayed off social media, avoided family drama, and focused on my work. For the first time in years, my life was quiet, peaceful even. Then one rainy evening, someone knocked on my front door. I opened it and froze. It was Ryan, my twin brother. Looked nothing like the man who smirked at me before the wedding. He had lost weight. His eyes were red and exhausted. His beard was unshaven. He looked like a man carrying the weight of his own mistakes. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at me and quietly said, "I lost everything." I didn't answer, because what was I supposed to say? He lost his reputation. His friends stopped talking to him. My parents barely spoke to him anymore. And Emily? She left him just 2 weeks after the wedding. The same woman he betrayed me for walked away when things became difficult. Ryan gave a bitter laugh and said, "I destroyed my entire life, trying to steal yours." Hearing those words should have made me happy. Months earlier, I dreamed about this moment. I imagined him suffering the way I suffered, but standing there looking at my own brother completely broken, I felt something unexpected. Sadness, because no matter what he did, Ryan was still the little boy who shared a bedroom with me, the kid who defended me from bullies, the brother who used to tell everyone we'd conquer the world together. Somewhere along the way, jealousy turned him into someone I no longer recognized. Ryan wiped his eyes and handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter. He told me he had been writing it for weeks because he didn't think I'd ever forgive him face to face. The letter was heartbreaking. He admitted he spent years feeling invisible because everyone compared him to me. He was jealous of my career, my relationship, even the way our parents looked at me. At first, he flirted with Emily out of insecurity. Then it turned into an affair. And by the time he realized how wrong it was, he was too ashamed to stop. I finished reading and looked at him for a long time. Then he asked me the question he was terrified to hear the answer to. "Do you think you could ever forgive me?" Honestly, I didn't know, because forgiveness isn't forgetting, and betrayal like this doesn't disappear overnight. I took a deep breath and told him the truth. "I don't hate you anymore, Ryan. But I can't be your brother the way I used to be." Tears filled his eyes. He nodded slowly because deep down he already knew. Some relationships survive betrayal. Others survive only as memories. Ryan turned around and started walking back to his car. Then he stopped, looked over his shoulder, and said something that still stays with me today. "If I could trade places with you and take back the pain I caused, I would." And for the first time since all of this began, I believed him. A year has passed since Ryan stood on my doorstep, asking for forgiveness. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Healing doesn't happen the day you expose the people who hurt you. It happens the day you stop letting their betrayal define your future. For a long time, I thought Ryan stole everything from me. My fiancée, my wedding, my happiness, even my faith in family. But I was wrong. The only thing he really stole was time. And I refused to let him take any more of it. I started traveling. I reconnected with old friends. I went to therapy for the first time in my life, something I used to think made people weak. Turns out, asking for help is one of the strongest things a man can do. Slowly, the anger faded. The nightmares stopped. And one day I realized something incredible. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was finally living again. As for Emily, I haven't spoken to her since that night. A few times she tried to reach out. She wrote long messages saying she regretted everything. That losing me was the biggest mistake of her life. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe she wasn't. But some doors once closed are meant to stay closed forever. Ryan and I still speak occasionally. Birthdays, holidays, short conversations. Nothing like before. Maybe it never will be. But I no longer carry hatred in my heart. Because forgiveness isn't giving someone another chance to hurt you. It's giving yourself permission to move on without carrying the weight of what they did. And honestly, that's the greatest revenge I could have ever asked for. Not exposing them at the wedding. Not watching their lives fall apart. But waking up every morning with peace in my heart while they live, with the consequences of their own choices. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not canceling the wedding the moment I discovered the truth. And my answer is always the same: no. Because that day didn't ruin my life. It saved it. If Ryan hadn't betrayed me, I would have married someone who never truly loved me. I would have spent years building a future based on lies. Instead, I lost two people I thought I couldn't live without, and found a version of myself I never knew existed. So if you're listening to my story while going through betrayal of your own, remember this: the people who break your heart aren't the authors of your story. You are. And sometimes, the most painful endings become the beginning of the best chapters of your life. That's not just something I believe anymore. It's the life I'm finally living.